It's me, Michelle Thompson, here, otherwise known as Cornhole Mish, and this topic is really fun for me to talk about because we talked about on Monday about like goal setting and all of that kind of stuff. On Tuesday, we talked about mindset traps. Yesterday, we talked about how to create a daily practice and routine. And then today, it's why do all those three things equate to pressure? And then how do we make them equate to using it under high pressure environments? Like, how do we take all that and actually use it when we're playing cornhole? So, that's what we're going to talk about today. So, super fun topic. If you have not watched the first three videos, you're definitely going to want to go do that at some point so that you can learn all the things that lead up to it. It's like I talked about on Monday how it's like a foundation thing or like a pyramid, right? So, like, day one is the foundation, and then we're building upon that. So I know it's really exciting to go straight to the like, what do we do during gameplay, but you're going to want to do the other things as well. Okay, so before we dive into what we do on the actual gameplay in high pressure situations, I need to talk a little bit about what actually happens to the body and under stress and why it works or doesn't work. Like when you are feeling, we're going to use the word stress, but it could be, obviously nervous, anxious, high pressure types of situations. A lot of people think about this fight or flight response. It's the most commonly known thing that we think about with stress is, when my heart's racing and I'm sweating and my breathing is quickening and I'm feeling nervous and anxious. That's the stress response. It helps. It's helpful if you have to run away or fight or things like that. But what a lot of people don't realize, and there's a really, really good book called The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. She's got a really good TED Talk on it as well. I highly recommend checking it out because she goes into the different ways that you actually can have a stress response that's different. And when you are in a high pressure environment playing cornhole, there's money on the line, there's people watching, you're trying to, move up in rankings or get accolades, things like that. Um, you're going to either trigger the fight or flight, or what you may not know about is the challenge response. And the challenge response actually mimics the threat response in a lot of ways, except that you actually perform better than you've ever performed as opposed to worse. So when you see people that under high pressure seem to do better, like rise to the challenge, you're like, whoa, I think that's the best you've ever played. I can remember in Austin last year, in 2021, Kaylee Hunter was in a shootout and she got to the broadcast. And you could tell when she got on that broadcast court, something switched and she played the best she's probably ever played in her life in the most high pressure situation. We talk about it a lot. Mark Richards threw a perfect game on a broadcast court. So did Derek Holland. So the reason why they're performing the best they've ever performed is because they actually are using the challenge response instead of the threat response. It's still going to be heart racing. It's still going to be sweating. It's still going to be the same things over there in terms of the symptoms. But what actually happens is you utilize different parts of your body and brain, and what you get is heightened senses, more focus, better energy, and improved like stamina or ability to perform. So you get your best performance under the most amount of pressure if you can trigger this challenge response. And a lot of how we go into challenge instead of threat, and the threat response, by the way, is when you aren't as focused, when your mind's racing, when you're shaking, when you're sweating, and you get a performance that you're like, I swear I'm better than that. Like, if I really hope people know that is not my best playing and I can do better. If that's what you're thinking, you turn into a fight or flight response as opposed to a challenge response, which allows you to play the best you've ever played. And if you decide to read the book, The Upside of Stress, what you're going to hear a lot about in that book and how we trigger challenge versus threat response is that it's all about your interpretation or your expectation of yourself and stress. So if you feel the heart racing, the body sweating, the breath quickening, and you're like, oh no, this is bad. This is going to be bad. This means that I might throw bad. I can't handle this, et cetera, then you're definitely not going to trigger the challenge response that helps you play your best. And what helps you trigger it is the opposite. It's I can do this. I can handle this. This is all okay. These feelings are normal. These symptoms of what I'm feeling in terms of my heart racing, these kinds of things, all normal, but this is going to, but I can do this. So it's the belief in yourself. And I recommend that book to dive into that further. But I want you to know that there's a reason why some people play their best game in high pressure situations and some people play their worst game. And it has everything to do with which one of these stress responses you're triggering. Okay? Okay, so what else can we do to make sure that we perform well under pressure? The first thing is exactly what we talked about yesterday. Do your daily routine. Do 5 to 10 minutes of the things we talked about. Even if you just choose a few of those off the list, do that every single day. And you will be prepared to perform under pressure and more likely to use the challenge response. Another huge thing to do is when you guys are practicing your mechanics, when you're out there throwing bags in your backyard or wherever, one thing you could do that would be immensely helpful is before you even throw the bag, before you walk up to the boards, create some kind of ritual that helps you try to drop into the right state of mind. So whether that's I'm calm, I'm focused, I'm whatever, right? So whatever this state is, like think about times when you've played your absolute best and try to conjure up that feeling, that state, and then go throw. And make it a ritual that every time you go to throw seriously, you first shift it into that state. And obviously, you first need to know what that state feels like. And I know that that's not always the case for everybody. So you might need to kind of practice different states to see what works the best. Like, what if I practice getting really calm and centered? Does that produce my best game? What if I like jump up and down and get excited? Does that produce my best game? So if you have not been in the zone before, to be able to say, I know exactly what that feels like, you might need to try some things on to elicit it. And then so you're going to do this ritual. Now, I highly recommend using something called anchoring. This is a neurolinguistic programming tool that we use. And anchoring, I find, is the most powerful with music. I bet there's songs that I could play right now that could take you directly back to a situation, like full memory in detail of a situation, and that's called an anchor. So it's something that your brain has stored that can bring up an entire memory. So part of this ritual, create some kind of anchor. It could be that depending on how your brain works and body works, it could be something like when I tap my or pull my ear or whatever, I can trigger this state. Like whatever you want to anchor it to. I like a song. I think songs are powerful. So if you picked a song that you would play it once you're in that state of mind, and that would be the trigger for your brain to go, oh, this is the state that we're going to get into. We're going into gameplay state or whatever. And that will help trigger it that way. So using anchors is really, really powerful. And if you're interested in more of that, NLP or neurolinguistic programming does a lot of things with anchors and getting into specific states to produce certain results. So create that in the zone state, anchor it with something, and then every time you go to play, take that moment for that ritual and that anchor and put yourself in that state before you go out there on the boards. It's going to become easier and easier the more that you do it, and very easy to quickly switch to it. The other thing that needs to happen is acknowledging your emotions that come up before, during, and after the game and not making meaning. We talked about this ad nauseum on day 2. Emotions are normal. You're going to feel them. You need to acknowledge them. Don't suppress them. Don't tell them they shouldn't be there or dictate what they should or shouldn't be. Allow them to be there, and then don't make meaning out of it. So, okay, I'm about to walk up to the court. I'm feeling X, Y, or Z. That's totally normal. That feelings, you're allowed to be there. I'm just going to throw my best game anyway. Like, you're allowed to be there, but it's not going to interfere with how I throw. So letting the emotions be there, not allowing them to mean anything, and just going out there and getting focused and throwing your best game. Another thing that's going to be really helpful during the actual gameplay is try to focus on your breath. So 3 things. Focus on your breath. Ground down through your feet, feel your feet on the floor, and then use your senses to bring you the moment. And the easiest one is the feeling of the bag in your hand. So if your mind starts to race to, oh my goodness, I'm down 10 points, what if I don't win, I'm gonna blah blah blah, that person's looking at me, they don't think I'm good, etc. So if you're spiraling, let's say, take a few deep breaths. You might not have time for a few, maybe it's one. So as you take that really deep breath, feel your feet planted on the floor. Feel the feeling of the fabric on your hand. It brings you back into the body, into the present moment. So anytime you're feeling like you're up in the energy in your head, up here, you need to ground down before you throw that bag. So it could be 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, whatever you need to do. And if you're someone that, like, people like flip the bag or spin the bag, like those kinds of things, just make sure you're feeling what's happening, like bringing your physical, like tactical feelings of what's happening. I'm feeling the fabric of the bag. I'm feeling the ground of the board. I'm hearing a conversation to my left. Like anything that can fully bring you into the moment is going to be really, really helpful. Okay, affirmations that we talked about on yesterday, during gameplay would be a great time to repeat these affirmations, but only if you can believe them. So if your affirmation, for example, was, I'm the best player in the room, okay, maybe that's one that you're saying to yourself in your daily routine to help you feel confident. But when you say, I'm the best player in the room, if there's a little voice or a little feeling that's like, yeah, right, or no, you're not, that person's better, like, then that's not going to work. Do not use that affirmation. So only use affirmations during gameplay that you 100% believe, as much as you believe the sun's going to come up the next day, as much as you believe that, your backpack's sitting next to you, like there's no doubt in your mind that it's true. Those are powerful to then repeat during gameplay. Another thing that would be really helpful is to actually trust that your body can do this. Like, you know what I mean? You don't need to be so analytical or intellectual. You've done the reps, you've done the practice, you've done the work, you've set the foundation. You're doing all the things. So this is the time to kind of let go and surrender to your body and say, all right, body, like, we're doing this thing. I know you know how to do this. We've practiced it a million times. Now's the time. But kind of letting your body do the work there and trusting that it can, that there's no reason that we can't get the bags in the hole or deal with precarious situations with defense and things like that. So allowing that to happen. And this is my last tip, is to believe in the cornhole gods, whatever you want to call them. How many times have you thrown a bag where you're like, ooh, I don't know about that one, and it goes in? Or it like hits this bag and ricochets off and does something that you're like, I couldn't have planned that if I wanted to. Like that was completely accidental and awesome. So sometimes the bag just goes in the hole, and I call that the cornhole gods, right? Like it was just meant to happen. You were just meant to get those points. You were meant to win. You were meant to whatever. But yes, sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes the person you're throwing against is just meant to win, and there's going to be some cornhole gods working their magic in their favor. And if that's the case, then you let it go and say, it's not my time. Maya Cup was someone that I loved when I asked her, what do you do when you lose a game? And she said, then I congratulate the other person and I tell myself that just wasn't my game to win, assuming you threw well, right? Obviously, if you did things you didn't like, there's a different approach. But if you threw well and you lost, the person out threw you, then you say that was just their time. And I thought, what a great way to look at it, because it allows you to kind of let it go and move on. And also know that sometimes that's going to be you. Sometimes it's just your day to win, your round to win. And if that's the truth, then things are just going to happen in your favor. Shots are going to happen that you've never made before. Crazy things are going to happen that didn't think you could do under high pressure. I mean, just stuff starts to work. So let the cornhole gods do some of their work as well. So to summarize how we perform during these high pressure situations is, first, understand the different types of stress response. Highly recommend the book, The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal, to really go through how we elicit the challenge response versus the threat response, which feel very similar but have very different results. And not just short term, by the way. The challenge response, even though the heart's racing and all that, it actually has zero negative effects on the heart and on the body. No health impact. There's a lot of studies that back this up. I don't have them in front of me at the moment, but I have read them, peer-reviewed studies that prove this. Do your daily routine. Really practice, like in your practice, get into the right state of mind, have a ritual that helps you anchor into the right state, and then do that before your gameplay when it matters as well. But you do need to practice it first. Acknowledge your emotions that come up, but don't make meaning out of them. Focus on your breath, ground your feet, and use your senses in the moment that you're throwing. Feel the bag in your hand. Use affirmations that you can believe. Trust that your body can do this, and believe in the cornhole gods, because they're there. All right, that's all I got. I just want to thank everyone who joined me through this week of this mindset stuff, I just really wanted to start to touch on some of these topics that we're not really hearing a lot about. Coming from the unique background of psychology, human behavior, and being a cornhole player, which I think helps a lot. Also, being a commentator, watching a lot of bags, a lot of players, a lot of pros, and having interviewed many, many pros over the last couple years with the podcast. So I feel like I have a unique perspective on the game using experience with my actual education. So I hope some of these things over the past few videos have been helpful for you, that you can take away some tips. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Follow me at Cornhole Mish, subscribe for more information, and we'll see you next time.